On today's episode of the Minecraft tutorial series where I teach you how to create Minecraft mods without any coding, we're going to be looking at recipes and how you can make your items craft into certain other things. So for a little demonstration here, we are able to take an ender pearl, put it into our stonecutter, and get out these ender pearl fragments that we made in episode 1. And then we are able to take them and combine them with some regular old coal and create this ender coal, which is another custom item that we made at the start of the series. So let's get right into it. All right, so getting started, I'd like to add a recipe to combine an ender pearl fragment with a piece of coal in order to craft our ender coal. And in order to do that, that's just a simple crafting recipe. We're gonna come up here to our plus button and we are going to add a new recipe. Now for the name, I'm just gonna call this the ender coal recipe and create new recipe. Now at this point, you'll see fairly simple window, no tab bar even at the bottom. This is all it is. There's a couple different types of recipe that we are going to be going through in this video, but we're going to start off with a crafting recipe. Now for the recipe registry name, generally we just leave this as it is. However, there is a cool thing you can do where you overwrite a vanilla Minecraft recipe. And the way you would do that is by setting this to the vanilla name of the recipe. So for instance, Acacia Boat will allow us to delete the vanilla Minecraft recipe for an Acacia Boat and replace it with what we are making here. And if we're going to be doing something like that, we should set the recipe namespace to Minecraft. And this means we're overwriting a vanilla Minecraft recipe. Otherwise, since we're not doing that, we can just leave this at mod and just set this back to the name of our item. This recipe group name here can actually be whatever you want. In this case, we're just going to leave it blank, but what it does is it controls things that are grouped together in the recipe book. Like for instance, different colors of glass will show under one recipe, and when you click on them, you can choose which color of glass you want to make. So if we were to create multiple recipes and give them the same group name here, it would show up similarly to that in the Minecraft recipe book, where both recipes would be grouped under one thing and clicking on them would expand it. For the crafting book category, this is just the category that it shows up under in the recipe book. However, different recipe types will actually have different categories as well. For items that unlock this recipe, this is a list of items which you will need to have in your inventory in order for this recipe to first show up in the recipe book. So I'm going to actually add our ender pearl fragment, and this way this recipe will only show up for players once we have one ender pearl fragment. Then it will be permanently unlocked. And finally, whether or not the recipe is shapeless. And this is a unique toggle for crafting recipes, which indicate basically the way that you have to place items in the grid. Examples of shapeless recipes would be something like a book. You can orient them like this, or like this, or like this, and it will still give you a book. Whereas something that isn't shapeless would be like bread. You always have to lay the 3 wheat in a row in order for it to create bread. If you put them in any other orientation, it won't work. Now for my recipe here, I'm going to tick this on, and that means that whatever we put in this grid here can be oriented however you like, and it will still result in the output. And this grid over here should be fairly self-explanatory as to how you use it. So I'm just going to add an ender pearl fragment, and I'm going to add a piece of coal. And then this, for the output over here, I'm just going to add one of our ender coal. And this little box under here just allows you to choose how many of the item is outputted. So if we wanted this to give, I don't know, 3 ender coal, we could do that. But I don't, so I'm just going to keep this at 1. And once we're done with this, we can just come up here and click on Save Mod Element. The next recipe I'd like to make is one that allows you to combine 4 of these ender pearl fragments into one full ender pearl. So I'm going to click on Add, Recipe, and I'm just going to call this ender pearl from ender pearl fragments recipe. Once again, the name doesn't really matter, but this is what I like to do when I'm adding a recipe for a vanilla item, or when I have something that has multiple recipes, is I like to indicate how you craft it as well as the output. We'll just create new recipe. Once again, the registry name doesn't really matter, so I'm just going to leave it this time. And for items that unlock this recipe, I'm going to add the pearl fragment once again. But this time I'm not going to check shapeless. I want you to have to place these 4 fragments in a little 2x2 square in order for it to output. So I'm just going to add them just like this. We'll add one here, one here, one here, and one here. And this will output 1 ender pearl. Okay, but you might be thinking, what if you wanted to place the ender pearl fragments like this in the grid instead of here? Or what if you wanted to use the 2x2 inventory crafting grid in order to make your item? How would that work? Well, that's why when you're creating your recipes like this, you're actually going to want to keep them as close to the top left corner as possible. And the reason for this is that when Minecraft is searching for whether a recipe can be made or not, it is going to start from this top left corner. Since we've set it up like this, we'll actually be able to put this little square of ender pearl fragments anywhere in the grid, and also in our 2x2 grid. But this is different from shapeless recipes because we couldn't set it up like this, for example. It still will have to keep its square shape, but it can be put anywhere in the grid. So I'll just go ahead and save that now. Now I'd like to also make a recipe that goes the other way. I think we should be able to turn ender pearls back into ender pearl fragments. But instead of a normal crafting recipe, I'm going to be adding a stone cutting recipe. So you'll actually put an ender pearl in a stone cutter in order to get back the fragments. So I'm going to add a new recipe. We're going to call this ender pearl fragments from ender pearl recipe. and I'm going to set this type to Stonecutting. And you'll notice that the interface changed a little bit. Now there's only one input and one output. So our input will be an ender pearl, and our output is going to be 4 of these ender pearl fragments. So we'll just type 4 in that box down there. But other than that, everything else is pretty much the same as a crafting recipe, and we can just leave this one as well. Now next up, let's add a furnace recipe. I want to be able to take this enmium ore and smelt it into an ender pearl. So we'll add a recipe, and we're going to call this enmium ore smelting recipe. We'll change the recipe type to smelting, and we're going to set the input as 1 enmium ore and the output as a pearl. Once again, everything else here is pretty much the same except for the XP reward and the cooking time. Now the cooking time is once again in ticks, so you would divide this number by 20 in order to get the number of seconds. So in this case, this is saying that this will take 10 seconds to cook. Now every item in vanilla Minecraft takes 10 seconds to cook, so I would suggest that you don't change this. But if you were to reduce it to, let's say, 100, then this item would be able to be smelted twice as fast as a vanilla item. And now for the XP reward. This controls how much experience you'll get once you pull the item out of the furnace. For reference, once again, I've been preaching this whole time, I'd recommend looking at the Minecraft wiki. If you go under recipes and ores, right under here, it shows the amount of experience that you get from smelting normal vanilla ores. I think that this enmium ore is kind of similar to redstone dust, so I'm going to set this to 0.7. And what this actually means is that there is a 70% chance to get 1 piece of experience. So we'll set this to 0.7, and we can go ahead and click save. But remember, when you're creating a smelting recipe, you should also create a blast furnace recipe so that we can put this in a blast furnace and get an ender pearl as well. So in order to do that, I'm actually just going to duplicate this one, but we're going to change this to say blasting instead. And we'll open it up, and we're just going to change this type here to blasting. Now we're going to have to redefine our input here and our output ender pearl. And the only other thing we should really have to change is set this cooking time to 100, because we know that blast furnaces smelt things in half the time as regular furnaces. Keep in mind, of course, blast furnaces can only smelt ores, so you should only really do this if you're making an ore smelting recipe. And if you're making some sort of food that can be cooked, you can add a smoking recipe instead. Now, in order to demo the next feature that I wanted to talk about, I've actually went ahead and created the stripped version of the ender log, which I talked about last episode. And in order to follow vanilla Minecraft conventions, we should probably make it so that both the regular log and the stripped log can be turned into these ender planks here. Now, what we could do is we could add 2 recipes. We could add one for the regular log and one for the stripped one, and that would work just fine. But what happens if we wanted to make another version of the log for some reason? Maybe you can double strip something. Then we have to add more recipes, and so on and so forth. And so what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to show you guys tags. Now tags are in this little tab over here, so we can just go ahead and click on it, and we'll notice that MCreator has already kind of created some of them by default. And what tags do is they create a way to sort of group different items and blocks together. And that way, what we can do is we can add both our regular and our stripped log to an ender logs tag, and then in our recipe, instead of referencing one or the other, we can actually reference the tag, which will tell Minecraft that any item from that tag can be used to create the recipe, not one or the other. So let's do that. We're going to add a new tag, and we're going to set the type to items. Now you might be tempted to set it to blocks. However, when you're making a recipe, you have to use item tags. Remember that technically in Minecraft, there's a distinction between blocks and items, and even blocks in your inventory are technically qualified as items. So in order to use a tag in recipes, it has to be of type items. Next, the namespace. This is the same thing that we were kind of talking about with the recipes. If we leave this as Minecraft, we'll be overwriting some sort of vanilla Minecraft tag. So I'm just going to change this to mod, which means that it is a custom tag created by our mod. And I'm going to set the tag name to ender logs. Once again, for this, you're going to want to be all lowercase and using underscores instead of spaces. I'm just going to click on OK, and we'll notice our new tag has popped up here. Now, in order to add things to it, we can just click in this little area over here and click on the plus button. And now we can select our ender log, and we can also select our stripped ender log. Very good. Okay, but coming back to the mod elements tab over here, how do we actually use that in a recipe? Well, let's add one here. I'm going to call this the ender planks recipe. And now what we're going to do is come over here to this recipe definition and click on our slot. And instead of clicking on any item here, we're going to click on use tag. Now at this point, this is a little bit tricky because you're going to have to remember the mod ID that you made when you set up your project. Now, no worries if you don't remember it. You can just close this out, come to workspace up here at the top and click on workspace settings, and it will be shown right here. This is what you'll want to remember right here. I'm actually just going to even copy and paste this. So I'll copy it, and then we're going to come back on here, use tag, and we have to start with that mod name. So end update is what we named our mod, and now we're going to type a colon followed by the name of the tag that we created. So ours was ender_logs, just like this, and we're going to click on OK. And now what this little tag symbol here means is that anything that belongs to the ender logs tag from our mod will work in this item slot. And I'm just going to set the output to 4 of our planks right here. Now additionally, for our unlock condition down here, we can also add a tag just like this, or as it says, you can right click on an ingredient and it will just copy it over for you, so you don't have to type it again. And we'll go ahead and press on save. Now finally, the last thing that I'm going to show you is how to add your custom items into vanilla Minecraft tags. Now why would you want to do this? Well, the main reasons that I'm thinking of are for recipes once again. So for instance, any vanilla Minecraft plank can be used to craft sticks. Ours right now can't be used to craft sticks, and obviously you could go ahead and add a custom recipe to craft sticks, but what we're going to do instead is tag our ender planks here as planks. And that way, when Minecraft is looking for planks in order to create sticks, if our ender planks happen to be used, it'll work fine. Same thing goes with our ender log and our stripped ender log. The main use that I can think of for this is putting it in the input slot in order to make charcoal in a furnace. And by tagging these as vanilla Minecraft logs, we'll be able to do that with ours as well. And in order to do that, we're going to come back over to the tag section, click on add a new tag, but this time we're going to leave the namespace on Minecraft, and we're going to set the tag name for the first one to planks. I'm going to click on OK, and now we can add our ender planks to this tag, and they will behave just like vanilla planks in crafting. Now I feel like you already know what I'm going to say, but the Minecraft wiki has a really great page on all of the item tags that are in the game. So you can scroll through these and see which ones you should be using in order to give your items certain functionality. For instance, if we add an item to the beacon payment items tag, then we'll be able to use it in beacons in order to set the potion that it will grant. Metal nuggets, if you want to be able to craft a name tag with it. But this is also where we can see that logs are a bit counterintuitive, because in order to make our logs actually burn into charcoal, we're going to want to give it not the tag logs, but the tag logs that burn. And the reason for that is because the nether logs in the base game don't actually burn into charcoal. So that's why they're separated like this. But note that as we can see here, by adding our log to logs that burn, it automatically gets pulled into logs naturally. So we'll get all of these things as well. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to add a new tag, items and logs that burn, just like this. Click on OK, and we will add our ender log and our stripped ender log, just like that. And now if we test them with any sort of vanilla Minecraft recipes like that, they should work properly. So speaking of, let's test. We're just going to click on the play button, as we do. And here we are back in our silly little world. So if we come over here, let's check these recipes in the order that we made them. So first, let's check that we can craft ender coal. I'm gonna grab a crafting table, I'm gonna grab some coal, and by putting them together just like this, there we go. There's our ender coal. And of course, like I mentioned before, we can put this in any orientation inside of the crafting table and it will still work. Next up, let's test turning our ender pearl fragments into regular ender pearls. So if we come into a crafting table, put them in a square like this, and there we go. And like I said before with this one, if we were to set the shape a little bit different, it wouldn't work. But if we were to move it all into one corner, it still works. Now what about turning these ender pearls back into ender pearl fragments? Well, for that, we can grab a stone cutter, and there we are, ender pearl fragment. And you can see it makes 4 of them. So there's our whole stack back. Next up, we added a smelting recipe for enmium ore, so we'll just come up here. We'll even use some of our custom coal and our enmium ore. If we plop it in, we should be able to smelt it, just like that. And very good, we've gotten 1 ender pearl out of it. Of course, this should work in a blast furnace too, but I'm not gonna waste your time testing that. Instead, let's move on to our planks and logs. So with both our regular log and our stripped log, we should be able to craft planks, just like this. And using these planks, we should be able to make any sort of vanilla items, like we can make sticks, or we can make chests. We could also use this to make a wooden pickaxe. And that all happens because we added it to our tag. And of course, by placing our ender log in the furnace, like we showed earlier, it'll start cooking and eventually turn into charcoal. There we go. And that's actually going to be it for today. Hopefully this video was helpful in teaching you how to make all sorts of fun crafting recipes for your items and how to give them a little bit more vanilla-like functionality. In the next one, we're going to be looking at how to make custom tools and armor that you can wear. So stay tuned for that. And remember to stay subscribed so that you don't miss it when it comes out. All right, I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye. You can stick these logs in a furnace. They do not burn. Oh, that's interesting. Why do they not burn? And this is going to be a nightmare to edit. Yay!